Today we are with OnEBoardHome series, and our guest is David Amerland. Thank you, David, for accepting our invitation, and thank you, everyone, for watching us. We have known each other since a few years already, and even met face to face in the physical world. I'm one of the lucky people on this Earth planet, Amerlandia. But please introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. I'm really thrilled to see you all again. It's been a long time since we actually connected. All right, so introductions. I'm David Amerland. What do? I write books and I give talks and I do some strategy sessions for large corporations, and I blog and write and do stuff like that.
Thank you so much, David. I'll be the moderator for our talk today. And my first question to you is, do you have an online home? What from the across channels and platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn, your websites, Medium, YouTube, Amazon, so you are present daily. Do you have one particular place that you would call an online home?
Well, like many people, since Google Plus closed down, I'm homeless. I'm sort of going around here and there and sort of talking to people here and putting some posts in certain places like LinkedIn and like Twitter primarily and YouTube for videos. But there's no feeling like Google Plus. It was an amazing place. I just feel honored to have been through that journey and to have met so many great people through that.
Yes, we all feel the same way, and that's why we started asking for hoping to find somebody who knows the answer.
Unfortunately, there isn't, and it's very easy to get angry at Google, and I am, believe you me. But at the same time, it's part of the evolution of the web. It's changing. We need to change with it. It's tragic that it happened, but we just need to find new ways to maintain the connections and to make a difference as we go across the digital sphere.
You would be surprised that I keep a quote you sent to me the last days before the shutting down of Google Plus. You said, Nina, we need to build our own communities like stepping stones and continue being present on the web. So
That's right. Yeah. I mean, Google Plus was great because it allowed us to find people, and we didn't find the whole world. We found people that mattered. They mattered to us, and hopefully we mattered to them. And I think we just need to maintain that as we go across.
there's some technical discrepancy. Yes, there was a small technical discrepancy.
Okay.
And now my fellow OnEBoard members have also prepared questions for you.
Okay.
Peggy, would you please ask your question?
Okay.
Thank you, Nina, and thank you, David, for being here. My question is about values. You've talked about how businesses should stay true to their values, and I'm wondering how you see social media actually affecting that, because you have local businesses, but they are posting and engaging with an international audience, and sometimes it seems like the loudest voices on social media dominate and influence businesses, even though they may not be that business's actual customers or their actual local people local to them. How do you see that playing out, and how can businesses really focus on the people that should matter most to their business?
Well, what an excellent question. And I think you posed a problem which many businesses face and very few businesses have actually solved, even large businesses with a global audience that has a sort of a localized presence that may be national to a particular country. Now, essentially, this is being true to who you are, being true to your audience, and actually finding the resonance between them and you. And if you find that, even if you post it in the open space of the world through one of the social media channels, if you're called out or if you are challenged by a so-called influencer, then all that they are showing is that they're challenging a value that is important to your audience, that it's core in who you are and it's part of your sort of core identity. And there's no problem with that. They will only sort of fall flat on their face, and your audience will actually rise to your defense because they will actually be able to understand what it is. And the noise which will surround such an event will be to your benefit. The reason so many businesses actually fall flat on this is that they try to be something they're not. Then when they're challenged, they get defensive. Then when they get defensive, they prove to be not who they are or who they say they are, or not, there's a gap between their professed values and their actions. And that is a real problem. And I think, this gap needs to close. The cognitive dissonance that arises from this needs to disappear. And the moment that happens, well, you have an unassailable position.
Yeah, my impression is that some businesses haven't actually thought their values through that carefully.
Absolutely.
Like, it's easy to say things, but to actually follow through with that is difficult. And that kind of leads into my second question. This especially comes up not just business, but with the elections coming up here in the US and in other countries. Do you actually see social media like Twitter and Facebook as a net positive? Or do you think it's really just ruining everything?
I think it's easy to focus on the negative right now because it affects us so much at a time when we already feel vulnerable in the world. And at the same time, we feel helpless sometimes to actually change it when there's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of infighting and outfighting going on social media platforms. At the same time, this is the messy connectivity of the human condition. People across the world from different tribes getting together and initially perhaps throwing stones at each other. But eventually that will also be the same medium through which we come to interact. So overall, this is a positive thing. And I think we've seen the same thing in the real world. Every time we have any kind of international space through which we connect, an international body through which we all connect by contributing equally to it, we go through the same stage of norming, storming, forming, and performing.
I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, because what I've observed is that to a certain extent, it really highlights divisions, not just between countries, but between different social groups within the same country. And but those divisions are already there. And the social media is just highlighting that, perhaps.
It does.
Thank you so much.
I think your perception is absolutely correct. Social media is in many ways a magnifying lens. It's a very narrow channel which cuts out all the distractions, narrows down the extraneous information that personal contact would give us, and allows us perhaps to project particular aspects of who we are or what we believe. And that creates that potential for conflict. At the same time, although we see these differences and it's good to see them, we also intuitively begin to understand that, we are all people inhabiting the same planet, sharing exactly the same basic goals. Once that sinks through, then, we already have the channels for connection. So I think, again, overall, we're heading in the right direction, even though it's painful right now.
I'd like to believe that's true. Thank you so much. Monica, do you have some questions for David?
Yes, thank you, Peggy. So, David, it's good to see you here. And
Likewise.
I always think of your sniper mind. So, if you don't mind, I would like to come back to your sniper mind.
Okay.
So, I haven't read it through completely, but what I got is the sniper mind is focusing very strictly on one direction, on one goal. So to me, it's just like the opposite of the World Wide Web. It's open, 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 open. And so how do you connect this together? So how does it make sense to have it both?
Well, the sniper mind in its entirety teaches us how to clarify what we want, understand who we are, and determine where we're heading. And if we know those things, then we make better choices at any particular time in any particular context. So even if we take, whichever context humans work in, we can't be everything to everyone. We can't do everything at once. We can't be everywhere at once. So we have to be able to focus, which means we need to be able to prioritize, which then allows us to allocate our resources, mental, emotional, psychological, in order to achieve those goals. And if we don't know what those goals are, then we don't know how to do this. If we can't focus, then we know how to achieve it. So essentially, the sniper mind is the techniques which we need in order to do the things which we feel we have to do when the time comes for us to do them.
Yeah, that's a very good impact. I'm working on my goals still.
we all have to. I mean, we all think we know what
Yes.
we are, who we are, and what we want. But in truth, because we live in the real world, there's a multitude of external circumstances impacting upon us, which distract us. They sort of make us think of different things, make us reprioritize our sort of lists and priorities.
Yes.
And we need to be able to focus better. And this is a skill which we all need to work on.
Yeah, that's good. Good advice. So the next point I'd like to ask you is about the semantic web. I know you are very busy with getting more clearance about the semantic web. Can you just tell us a little bit, so a first spot, how to get it? What is the importance? What is the connection with the semantic web?
Okay,
What is changed?
Semantic web, it's in its entirety, essentially, is an image of the digital world that is as accurate and as clear to us as the real world. And in the real world, when we see something or talk about something, even something fictional, if we talk about Harry Potter or The Last of the Mohicans, you think, these are fictional characters, and yet they have a real context and a whole history and understanding, which is commonly shared, which gives them a real existence in our minds, which makes them entities. The digital world hasn't yet quite got there. And how we get there is a construct to which we all contribute. We contribute through our actions, the things which we share, the sources which we bring to the surface for others, the kind of information we put out there, and also this is critical now, the way we communicate. If we choose to communicate, for example, in a very messy way, where we just throw anything out there, we don't pay a lot of attention to it, and then we go away and do other things, come back, and nothing really matters because it's kind of digital, well, we're only contributing to the fuzziness of it. If we choose to communicate in a very clear way, where we actually have meaningful conversations, meaningful connections, when we share stuff, it's from credible sources, then we become part of the solution. And I think this is both the beauty of it and also the difficulty, because we can't always behave like that, or we don't all behave like that, and this is what we actually need to have in mind as we move forward.
Yeah, so it's better not to be messy, but more like a sniper.
Yeah, in many ways, we just need to be focused and clear in what we do. And I know it's difficult. Everybody struggles with this. There's no single person who can be that all the time. But if we're conscious.
Oh, it's frozen again. I think you will come back soon.
Yes, hopefully. So let's wait. And then Bob's question follows. Yeah.
David is here again.
I think we have connectivity problems.
Yeah, somehow it's frozen. Yeah, well, but thank you so far, David. And I think Bob has some more questions as well. So it's your turn, Bob.
All right, thanks, Monica, and hey, welcome, David. Thanks for visiting with us today. It's really great. It's really great to hear all sorts of visionary. But hey, let me return to being a cynic and following up on Peggy. In fact, I want to pick on Silicon Valley. I got this little. I found this little Twitter post from a guy named David Hickel recently, and he said it's telling how the apex of technological innovation under capitalism is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It's Silicon Valley that's focused almost exclusively on getting people to click on ads. So So yeah, so I guess my question is, can that paradigm be shifted into what?
Well, first of all, I think let's contextualize this. Everything needs a beginning. And the beginning, in order to make sense, needs to provide some benefits to somebody who will invest in that beginning. I mean, let's think of the initial telecom system, for instance, how we got the Google as a search engine, all those things. Somebody saw profit somewhere down the line. They were willing to invest and create something. And once they've done that, then they create an ecosystem. So back to this now, capitalism in its sort of most sort of hardline form is there to make money and create profit and generate value for specific companies and individuals. And when it does that, it creates certain things and innovates like we have now. And once then it does and it creates the ecosystem and we're part of it, then it is back upon us to create the kind of pressure which will humanize that system for us. At the end of the day, it's a symbiotic relationship. If we all take our ball and go home and refuse to communicate through the web, all that $1 trillion industry is going to evaporate in a day. So obviously we're not willing to do that because we gain something out of it. But this is the whole conversation we're having as part of the transmutation, if you like, of our digital civilization. We're at the beginning of it. In the beginning, the ones with the most money, they had the boats and they had the convenience stores. But then, other things came along and sort of a better balance was found. And that's where we're heading. And back to your question, what can we do? We shouldn't be complacent. Sure, we use their services, but at the same time, they use our data. So we should be aware of the value we bring to that enterprise. We should be aware of our own ability to change things. And the moment we see something that is not what we like, we should actually speak up. We shouldn't be afraid.
So as a follow-up question, I'm into wildlife. How can I basically contribute to the semantic web in trying to inspire and motivate people to embrace the world outside of technology?
Well, I think what you're doing is invaluable. You're bringing in a passion which you have, which then becomes a window for others to see and experience. And that becomes both humanizing and enriching from a knowledge point of view. So suppose none of us knew anything about wildlife because we live in cities and we don't come in contact with it. And then we see your posts and we learn about them through them. And we learn to value nature. We learn to value wildlife diversity. We learn to value ecology and conserving the natural environment. And I think this kind of dissemination of knowledge, which comes through those activities, enrich each of us as a person. The more enriched we are, the better we become as human beings, the better we behave, the better decisions we make, the better civilization we will form. And ultimately, the civilization which will arise 50, 60, 100 years from now will be a construct created not by individual nations working together, but by countless individuals contributing to that. And that will require exactly the kind of multiplicity of views that you bring to the table and that each person who goes on the web brings to the table.
Oh, great answer. So thank you. I'd like to give the moderation back to Nina.
Yeah, that was a very visionary what you described, and I would like to go to the essential occupation of writing. Please tell us, when did you start to write? And would you please describe the writer of the future? How would they data express themselves? And
Okay.
what will their personality be?
All right. Well, I started writing very early. I mean, it's a kind of an urge. You feel the need to communicate or get things sort of translated from your thoughts to something concrete. So I've always been writing since I can recall, really. But I've always been reading, right? So I think the things are connected. Now, the writer of the future, there's no such thing. The writers are people. And as people evolve, the writers will evolve. As the channel evolves, they will find new ways to basically communicate with their audience. But I think what we should ask here, and this is where your question on personality goes, is what is the role of the writer? And it's not to write, that's a technicality, we can all write. But a writer basically communicates a vision, so he or she acts as a filter. So basically, what do? They draw in a large picture of what they see, and it doesn't matter whether it's fiction or non-fiction or anything in between, which is, an amalgam or whatever. They draw in the big picture. They create a sort of very similitude of the world which will resonate with their audience, and then they communicate something which will allow that audience to experience an aha moment. And we know now from neuroscience that, first of all, writers, even when they write fiction, they perceive a very real world in their head. And then readers, when they read what the writer has seen, decode that world and experience their own learning process like they're going through it. And this is the value of something like a business book, for instance, which allows you to visualize running an enterprise, even though you've never done it, by going through chapter by chapter all those lessons. Or a fiction book, which takes you through, perhaps the wilderness of the jungle, even though you've never been there, and you experience the dangers and how to survive that. And you take something away from that, both in terms of knowledge, but also in terms of character, in terms of imagination, and that personal enrichment, which allows you to become perhaps a little bit better version of yourself.
So the personality of the writer of my ancestors, for example, my grandchildren, wouldn't be so much different.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, you need to be perhaps a child, like perpetually curious. You need to be a little bit brave, because sometimes you go off on a limb and you put yourself out there and you could be wrong. I mean, this is a conscious decision I've made in my writing, and it's scary. I could sort of write about search, which is a safe subject for me now forever, but I choose to go into other subjects which are tangential but also related. And sometimes I'm just out on a limb, making assumptions and putting thoughts out there, and I have no idea if I'm correct or not. I just hope I am. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. There you go.
So, do you have your favorite title from all of your books? And when you pronounce it, you feel reconnected with that book?
Well, each of my books is dear to me, because literally it's a struggle to get through it and write it and complete it in a sort of way that actually makes sense. So it's hard to choose from any of them, but obviously the one that's dearest in my heart right now is the Sniper Mind, not least because I spent 3 years in a really deep dive in a very new world for me. It really challenged my brain and my thinking and everything else. But also I think it's very current in the way we experience the world, the way we experience each other in that world, and also the decision-making process that we are actually being called upon to make now, both as individuals, but also as a collective, where we actually have to work with others.
Thank you so much. Of course, The Sniper Mind is my favorite book. I keep your text there that you sent to me, and actually it also disclosed, and still I'm learning through the reading of the book. That's when I love a book, I read it all the time. I never stop reading it, so it's one of the few books, it's always around me.
I'm glad
And
to hear
also,
that.
yes, and what happened is that before I didn't watch TV at all. Now, after I read The Sniper Mind and rereading it, I watched about the seals. That's the only thing I watch on TV.
Amazing people, right?
So, and my husband starts saying, "Come on, Nina, the movie is starting." So I'm addicted to that movie already. Thank you so much for our talk today. It was
Thank you.
amazing. Thank you to everyone who was watching us. Please follow David from the link below. We are linking all his profiles, or at least the major ones. And please don't forget to subscribe to OnEBoard channel. We have the next series, OnEBoardHome, and then we have an yearly event in December. And don't forget also to click the notification bell. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. It's been brilliant seeing you.
Okay.